Hello, welcome to the Cables, Lace, and Hills podcast. My name is Sue, and I am a maker from northwestern Wisconsin. How are you doing? I would just first off like to thank everyone for liking and subscribing and commenting on my videos. I really do appreciate it, and I am finding a lot of confidence doing these videos, and learning editing is another fun thing. So for this week, I thought instead of just recapping on what I have accomplished and what I have done, I thought we would do like a little sit and knit and chat. So I don't have any questions from anybody. I was just thinking the other day as I was knitting. Actually, I was knitting this, which is my wilderness sweater by Lincoln Newman. And I need to do about 5 or 6 more inches of the body. You do it bottom up, and I need to get to the armhole. And I thought, I could just sit and knit in the round for a little bit and talk about where my journey has been on my crafting journey, where I'm going on my crafting journey, and what I want to do on my crafting journey. Now, when I was growing up, I was in love with Little House on the Prairie. I mean, I loved every aspect of it. I grew up in the 70s. It's not too surprising, the Back to the Land movement and all of that. When I was 8 years old, I believe, I received a couple or few really simple embroidery kits for Christmas. And I did them, and I loved it. I loved the colors. I loved creating the picture. I loved figuring it out. I loved everything about it. Now, I do have some notes here, so I might be looking at them because, I forget stuff. So when I was not knitting, so when I was 8 years old, and I got those embroidery kits for Christmas, we were on Christmas break, and I was watching Paddington Bear on probably PBS because, it was the 70s and we only had like 4 channels at the time. And Paddington Bear was really important to me because my grandma was from England, and Paddington was from England, and Paddington loved orange marmalade, and my grandma loved orange marmalade. I did not like orange marmalade at that time. I do like it now, but at that time I didn't. And I just remember sitting there at home working on these little embroidery kits and just being so proud. I have no idea whatever happened to those embroidery kits. No idea. No idea. I hope they weren't thrown away, but I have a feeling they were. So let's fast forward. When I was 9, I don't remember what made me think that I needed to be prepared for everything. Now, was it because my dad was an Eagle Scout and he was always talking about being prepared and being on time and blah, 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 blah? I don't know. But I always knew that I needed to be prepared. And being prepared, in my mind, meant knowing how to do everything. So I needed to know how to cook. I needed to know how to bake. I needed to know how to sew and knit and crochet and make clothing. And I've already started to learn how to embroider, but I needed to know more. I wanted to know how to be self-sufficient. Even though that wasn't the word I used back then, I just wanted to be prepared. I wanted to be able to build my own house, and I would build forts out in the parks, and there was a lot of fields by my house, and we lived in a very small town in Wisconsin. So I would wander around and think to myself, how could I make this stick into a fishing pole, spear, all of that stuff. And now I did a lot, of building of forts and trying to make things work. And I learned how to fish. I learned how to bake when I was 10. I learned how to cook when I was 11. So I did learn things, okay? But the crafting journey wasn't encouraged, okay? So when I was 10, my Crocheting Grandma did teach me how to crochet. And I dabbled in it over the years. And just like with embroidery, I would dabble in it over the years, but I would never really keep up with anything. Other stuff was more important. Riding bike was important, and then as you grow older, you get a job. And then that's important. And so the crafting journey kind of took like a lot of interludes, okay? I really wanted to learn how to sew, and they did teach how to sew in high school, but I wasn't allowed to take those classes. I was forced to take business classes, which it's not bad to know business stuff, but I really wanted to learn how to sew. But my family thought it was better for me to know how to cook. I am a pretty good cook. I'm not perfect, but I do like to cook. So late in high school, I got a needlepoint kit on a whim. And when I started doing it, I fell in love. The same kind of falling in love that I had with embroidery. And I liked it so much because I didn't have to do knots. I still have that embroidery needlepoint piece. Sorry, I'm getting the terms are all confused. I still have that needlepoint piece. It hasn't been framed. I should frame it, but it hasn't been yet. So after high school, I was really busy with college, and I, crocheted here and there, and I needlepointed here and there, and life just happens. And pretty soon you're like in your 30s and you're going, where did all that time go? What did I do? Did I ever accomplish the things I wanted to accomplish? And to be perfectly honest, I was pretty miserable. I wasn't, being artistic in any form. I was working all the time. Yes, I made fun drinks and I worked in restaurants, and, I had that kind of creativity where I was, when you make a drink, no drink is exactly the same as the last one because of small, minute details. But they should generally taste the same, like if you were making a brandy old fashioned, for example. So when I got in my 30s, I was really sad and I wasn't really doing the things I wanted to do. And I remember just paying bills off, just constantly paying bills and, not living a very, paycheck to paycheck life. And I had these needlepoint kits because I would buy them here and there, or I would get them for a Christmas present or whatnot. And I thought, you know what, I'm gonna start needlepointing again. So I did. And then I would really look forward to that, going home after work and sitting down and working on my needlepoint. It was a lot of fun. My cat is going crazy right now. If you hear a crash, it's because she's knocked down the cat tree or the curtains. Hey, Annie, no thank you. Annie, she wants to go outside really bad, but she doesn't know how cold it is. We're supposed to get an ice storm. We're under an ice storm warning right now, and I'd rather have 10 inches of snow than an ice storm. Anyway, so, hey, Annie. Okay, she's not listening. So when I started working on my crochet and needle points again, I thought to myself, I really do like this. But it wasn't until my grandma, my crocheting grandma, gave me all of her supplies. I was so honored. That was in 2004. And I would just like look at them and think to myself, what did people do way back when, before there was TV, before there was, computers and all that stuff? How do they keep themselves busy? What do they do? And I would look at her work and I would just go, this is amazing. That's what they did. They worked on things and they did stuff with their hands. And is that what I'm missing in life, that I'm not working with my hands? And I'd say, well, I work in restaurants, but it wasn't the same. Cooking for yourself or for your loved ones is not the same as cooking for orders. It just isn't. So I got my grandma's stuff and I thought to myself, let's see here. Okay. When I got my grandma's stuff, I wanted to learn more, but I didn't have the confidence that I was smart enough to do it. I believed that I wasn't smart enough to learn how to do certain things. And I made a lot of bad choices in this time period. From high school to my mid-30s, made a lot of bad choices. But one of the best choices I ever made was getting a dog. And when I got her in 2005, her name was Maya, things really changed. I felt like a purpose. You know, I had a cat, but cats, they're easier in some ways and harder than others. At the time, I thought they were easier, and I would be gone a lot, and that wasn't fair to her. Not at all. But having a puppy, you have to be home for that puppy. And being home, I would read, and I would needlepoint, and I would crochet. And I was working on stuff, but I wanted to know more. I wanted to be able to sew my own clothes. I wanted to learn how to knit. And even though I took a couple classes on how to crochet and read patterns, I could then apply that how to read patterns for knitting, but I still didn't understand how to knit. And I really, really wanted to learn how to knit, and I couldn't find anyone to teach me. So I just would work on stuff. Now, the thing that really got me going was being challenged. When I inherited I'm stepping back in time a little bit as a prelude to what's now. When I inherited my grandma's stuff, she had a partially done blanket for one of my uncles. And she didn't finish it, but all the yarn was there and the hook was there. And I was like, you know, I will figure this out. And one of my aunts said that I couldn't. And I was just like in a mood where I was like, challenge accepted. And that kind of helped me break free from the thoughts that I wasn't smart enough to figure this out. Now, I did not have my puppy at the time, and I had my cat, and she allowed me to just, just be. You feed a cat, you clean a cat box, she hangs out. She loved it that I was depressed because I was home all the time. So I sat down, figured out how to knit like my how to crochet like my grandma. I apologize for skipping on different terms for this thing that I'm talking about, but I am knitting and sometimes, distraction. So I finished her crocheted blanket and I gave it to my uncle, and he was amazed that I could do it as well as she did. She also couldn't tell where she left off and I began. And I think that right there really gave me a lot of confidence. Like, okay, I can do this. I like doing this. I want to do this. Doing this gives me a lot of happiness. Now, I inherited a lot of acrylic yarn from my grandma. A lot. A lot of it was from like Kmart and Prangieway and Woolworths. And when I finished that, I thought, okay, I'm going to make another one. And I just made blankets or other little things. And then I took my classes and I started understanding how I could do. And then whenever life was stressful, you have a bad day at work, you come home and you crochet and you'd feel better. And I'm like, oh, this is really helping me not focusing on the mire of problems I was facing at that time in life. This is helping me focus on the future. So let's fast forward a little bit. I was steadily crocheting again after my daughter was born. I would dabble in it. I would work on a blanket. I'd put it down. I would dabble in it. I would put it down. But once my daughter was born and I was staying at home with her, I crocheted continuously. And it's the only thing that helped me feel good. I mean, you say, oh, but you had a baby. Yeah, but you're living, for me, I was living in a town about 45 minutes away from everyone I knew. It was very small. It had one grocery store, it had a Family Dollar store, and a lot of bars, and a Ben Franklin. And I had no money. And I did have my grandma's yarn stash, which really saved my butt. In order to go to Walmart, we would have to travel at least a half hour. It was really hard, and we only had one car at the time, so I was stuck home all the time. Crocheting saved me. It really did. And so when we moved again to where I live presently, I was crocheting avidly, and I really wanted to learn how to knit. I really was watching a lot of videos on how to knit. I just never understood how everything kind of worked with each other. And I would ask people if they could help me learn how to knit, and they would say no, or not right now, or, whatever. There was a lot of excuses. So I have kind of a head cold. Excuse me. So I answered a Craigslist ad to crochet piecework for a company. And I crocheted rectangles. They were like that scrubby material, the mesh netting, plastic mesh netting, synthetic nylon. I don't know what it was. I still have a lot of it at my house. So I was working for a company that was selling gun cleaners. And so I would make the rectangle, and then they would send it off to a different sewer who had an industrial sewing machine. And then they would sew cord to it. And then, I got basically piecework. It was basically piecework. And I did that continuously for a couple years, almost 3 years. I don't think the company is going anymore because there was a lot of problems with it. And I have talked about this in a previous podcast. But the two owners split, and I have all the supplies. I made a lot of stuff, and I have never been paid for it. But whatever. I did make good money for like the 2.5 years that I did it. So during that time period, you kind of get tired of crocheting for somebody else. And you're like, oh, I wonder if I could teach myself how to knit. And so I started looking at YouTube, finally found a YouTube video that I understood. That's really important. Finding the teacher that can teach you, and only you can figure that out. So when I started knitting, I made scarves. I made little things. I just would increase my abilities. Now here I am doing a YouTube podcast. So the journey continues, and I have more interests. I want to make my own clothes. It's not just the simple fact of knowing where the fabric came from, or the ethicalness of that piece of clothing, because I don't mind buying clothes. I just want things to fit me, and I have a really hard time finding clothes that fit me and make me look nice in the stores. Plus, now everything is super expensive, and I have curated quite the fabric collection before Joann's closed, during the time that Joann's was closing. So I do have supplies. Now, let's see here. Okay, I am looking at my notes. I didn't know how to knit until I was 45 years old. And I have been knitting strong for the last 10 years. I started teaching myself how to use my sewing machine and sew basic clothing, like during the time that we were all at home. I made face masks. I made placemats. I have made a simple, small little quilty blanket. But there are things I want to teach myself with all of my crafts. So let's start with knitting. For knitting, I want to know how to actually do a provisional cast on. Now, some may say, oh, that is so simple. Sure. But if I can get around doing something I don't know how to do, I will. But I really want to know how to do a provisional cast on, not using I know that you can do a crocheted piece, but I also maybe different ways of doing the provisional cast on. I would like to have try the different ways, find the one that I really like, and then use that one. I also want to teach myself how to do the old Norwegian cast on, which is required from one of the patterns I have. And it looks really interesting, but also a little confusing. So I think it's just the way that you hold your hand. And I want to teach myself with that because of dexterity. I want to be ambidextrous. I want to be able to do as much with my left hand as I do with my right. I want to do Intarsia. And that is, I think, would be relatively easy to incorporate since I already do know how to do some color work. Now, another thing with a lot of Norwegian patterns is steeking. That's just the way they do it. They do a lot of color work and then they just do it in a tube and then cut slits for the armholes and for the neck. Now, I've seen people do it with crochet hooks and yarn. I've seen people do it with sewing. I've seen people do it with needle punching, where you kind of basically felt the area that you're going to cut, and then you can add your button band or whatnot. So steeking, that is another one. I have ideas of where I want to create my own colorwork sweater. Intarsia. I've seen similar ideas online, and I just think it'd be fun to do my own thing. Now, crochet, I want to do like garments. So I have made toys. I've made hats. I've made blankets. I've made scarves. I've made mittens. I've made a lot of different things. But the one thing I have not ever crocheted is a sweater. So I do have the yarn for it. I do have the pattern picked out, and now it's the time to learn, do a gauge swatch. The thing about crochet for me that's holding me back from making that sweater is, will my gauge be consistent? For some reason, it can be, but if I put it down for too long, my gauge will change a little bit. The same can be said for knitting, but I find that knitting is a more consistent gauge for me so far. So I want to make my own sweaters with crochet. Now the wind is kicking up a lot of leaves, and my cat Talulla is trying to kill the leaves through the window. All right, so sewing. Now, I want to use my machine as well as hand sew. I want to crochet clothes, bags, pouches. I want to make my own purse. I had a purse. I still have it because it was getting to the point of where it was almost falling apart, but it was made out of double quilting material, and it was called a travel bag. And I bought it from a local quilt store about an hour from here, and it had pockets all the way around the front. It was think of rectangle pockets all, maybe I'll take a picture of it, pockets all the way around the front, and on the inside it had pockets all the way around, and it was just so nice because I could have a pocket for my pens, a pocket for my paper, a pocket for my sunglasses, etc., etc., etc. So I would like to make my own purse. I also want to make my own quilts. You have all this leftover fabric and you're like, what am I going to do with this? Or what can I do this with? And I just have always loved patchwork quilts. That's one of my big goals in life is to do. So recently I found, it came up on my YouTube channel, Pojagi curtains. I'm going to put the name of it on my side here. And I find that just so cool. It looks like stained glass without being stained glass. So that is another style I want to do. And it looks relatively easy. It just takes time and dedication. And, sometimes it's easier for me to sit down and knit than it is even to bring out my crochet temperature blankets. So I believe now at my mid-50s that I am not too old to learn. Although when I was in my 20s, I thought I was too old to learn how to do crafting stuff. Like I missed the chance. I didn't get to do it. Blah, blah, blah. And now I'm like, I wonder if I can make a sweater out of hair sheep, Lopi yarn, and make it into this beautiful thing. And you know what? I can, and I am, and I will continue to make stuff. So I hope this gave someone out there who needs a little bit of encouragement that you can teach an old dog new tricks. I'm the dog in the scenario. That you're never too old to learn something. And, I remember working over at a residential living facility I worked at. And I was talking to one of the older residents, and she was a good 40 years my senior. And she told me she didn't even start needlepointing until she was in her 40s. And I just kind of looked at her. I'm like, holy crap. I mean, her needle points were like, oh gosh, they were like 3 feet by 6 feet. Just like 6 feet tall, 3 feet wide. And it was just this mat. And I'm thinking to myself, I know how long that takes. And she's like, yeah, I just did it in my 40s. And she was an avid crocheter, and she was a very nice lady. She was very Norwegian. So you're not too old to learn, and you can still learn. And sometimes these skills that we pick up along the way are the things that save us the most, especially in today's world, because everything is so digital that just like this tactile feeling of getting something in your hands and creating something and staying with it and persevering through the time of, is there any, as you see, I have been knitting for the last about half hour, and it doesn't look like anything's changed. But it has, and it will pretty soon become a sweater. So, thank you so much for stopping by. I almost didn't record today. I thought, do I really even have anything to talk about? Turns out I always have something to talk about. Also, if you can't laugh at yourself, who can you laugh at? So, on that fun note, I hope everyone is doing well. Thank you for liking. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for stopping by. And I hope you come by again. Take care. Have fun. Let me start over. Take care. Have fun. Bye for now.